Hello, this is Olivier Valois speaking. I'm working for HPE, looking after Pensando, also called HPE SmartIO. That's a networking technology. We're talking here about networking card, next generation, let's say, with some embedded networking and security features. So let me now just close this video, share my screen, where I have this demo running. So this is my demo environment. First, we have ESX servers, which are in this example 10.6.48.11 and 12 with 2 VMs in each, MySQL 01, Web 01, MySQL 02, and Web 02 with IP address in 10.6.48.73. 73 is this one, 71 is this one, 72 is probably this one, and 70 is this one. Anyway, the point is 70. When I ping from 73 to 72, I'm pinging outside the ESX. I'm pinging to another guy in the other ESX. So, and then I've got another ESX with all the control plane. You have a VCSA, the vCenter appliance, some Windows platforms that I'm using for the demo, and PSMs, which is the Policy and Services Manager. This is the Pensando software console, where we can, from where we can configure, let's say manage the Pensando cards. So we are talking about a pure software-defined networking solution with networking cards that are in multiple servers and centrally controlled and managed and configured through this console. So let me switch directly to the console now, and so that we can have some kind of a rapid view of the Pensando software console. So when you log in, you have a dashboard first, which gives you some information regarding, for instance, the sessions that are currently going through the Pensando cards. So all the Pensando cards in this dashboard. Another interesting element is the cluster, for instance, where we see that we have 3 nodes. The cluster is the PSM cluster. So we have 3 virtual machines running in a cluster to manage the Pensando networking cards. And then we have 2 networking cards. It says here 2 total DSCs. So one in ESX 11 and one in ESX 12. This is the rest is for information, let's say. Then if I click on the system menu, you have the cluster menu where it shows basically some information regarding the cluster. So we see that we have 3 nodes in this cluster. The star means this is the leader of the cluster, and then we have some statistics. The DSC is about the networking cards. So these are the networking cards that we are managing. So we have one which is in ESX 102, and the other one is in ESX 101. You have the IP address for the management of the card here. And then it provides you also some information about these cards, like for instance, the version, which is the latest one in this example, and on which host, so in which ESX host this card is installed. So this one is host 31, this one is host 21, and then also the workloads, so the virtual machines that are behind each card. That's basically the information you can get. You might, I would have configured a tag for the ESX host in, or for the VMs, sorry, in vCenter. I would have seen the tag here in this labels column. Then the DSC profile is not that interesting. The network interfaces, it represents all the interfaces of the networking cards. So you recognize the uplink 1 and 1.1 and 1.2. These are the 10 gig, 25 gig ports connected to the top of rack, and PF70 and PF69 are the physical function connected to the PCI bus, and then you have the management interface. So there is another, let's say, Ethernet card port where which you can use to configure the or to manage the card out of band. You can also manage the card in band, which is what I'm doing here. Then you have the hosts, where you can recognize the ESX host, 31 and 21, which cards are in each host and which workloads are in each host. Then you have a menu called security, where you have the NetSec policies. These are the firewalling policies. So if I click on this one, you might recognize something which is pretty familiar. We are talking about, let's say, a stateful firewall. So the first rule is permit any, so it's not really filtering anything. But I could decide, for instance, to put this line in row number 1 like this, and then it becomes a firewall with which will deny basically all the ping traffic, ICMP, from any source to IP addresses 72 or 73. That's an example of how to use the firewall. I'll come back to the previous configuration, safe policy. Oops. So I have to put this one as number 1 again, and safe policy. Yeah, the safe policy button is new in this version. Before it was immediately saved, so that's the reason why I had to do it twice, because I'm used to the previous version. Anyway, then we have some IPsec policies, which is the part where we configure the IPsec encryption between virtual machines, for instance, or it could be between bare metal, of course. And you can specify, as you can notice here, source IPs, destination IPs, and the protocol that you want to configure to encrypt. I have specified here ICMP, which means that I'm going to encrypt ping traffic, and all the rest will be in clear text. So that also shows that I can, let's say, selectively encrypt one protocol and not everything, or one application and not everything on host. I have that ability to really selectively encrypt specific applications. I can, of course, encrypt everything if I want. I have, let's say, the horsepower in the card to encrypt in hardware the everything. You might notice here something called protection strict. I have the ability, let me create maybe another rule, like you will see. I have the ability to specify here in the action, clear, protect permissive, or protect strict. Clear means that there is no encryption. It's used more for, let's say, testing purposes. Protect permissive means that I will try to encrypt the traffic, but if the device at the other on the other side of the link is not able to decrypt or encrypt the traffic, I will send it in clear text. And protect strict means that if at the end of the, let's say, IPsec tunnel, the server is not able to decrypt or encrypt, or is not able to set up the IPsec tunnel, basically I will drop the traffic. Then we have the ability to configure some apps that will be, let's say, that would be easier in the configuration later. If you want to do some filtering, for instance, you can define your own app, like my business apps, and which is using port 1372. Then in the filtering mechanism, you can specify the name of the apps rather than the protocol. Firewall profile, that's the DDoS, let's say, configuration. You are protecting from DDoS by default the server with this profile here. Then you have the monitoring menu, where you have some alerts and events for the cluster, for the cards, some logs that you can archive, some metrics, which are here I have predefined some metrics, but there are plenty of other metrics that you can configure if you want. These are just, for example, but as I said, you have I don't know, 50, 60, 80, 100, I don't know, a lot of parameters, networking parameters that you can configure to graph on the cards. And the good thing is that when you decide to graph one specific parameter, automatically you get 24 hours back of that parameter, which means that basically the console is collecting information permanently or for the last 24 hours of all the parameters, so that when you select one parameter, you have basically an history of 24 hours. Next, audit events. These are some interesting info about what's going on in the server, in the console. Something interesting is the firewall logs. You can decide to log the packets that are basically going through the firewall. You can decide also to implement some firewall log export policy, which I'm doing here. So for instance, I'm sending all the logs to a Splunk server. So I will not be able to show you that because the Splunk server right now is unavailable, but that's basically, it shows the ability to forward the logs to a Splunk server that can basically graph information regarding what's going on through the firewall. You can decide to export all logs or only allow logs, or deny or reject. You have really the ability to do whatever you want. You specify a transport port, UDP 9001 for Splunk. And I've got a second rule where I export basically syslog information to a syslog server on port 514, and it's only deny and reject logs that I'm sending. Next, troubleshoot. That's where you can configure IPFix. Basically, I've got here an example of an IPFix rule where I say you collect everything, any, basically, and you send this as IPFix in IPFix format to this IPFix collector. Then you have a diagnostics tool, which is where you specify things like, let me show you something. I just specify IP addresses here. Yeah, 10.6.48.72. Here we go. And it shows you basically the end-to-end information regarding the VM 73 to the VM 72, with which microsegmentation VLAN it goes through, which networking card, DSC card on both sides, and also it gives you some information regarding the IPsec, if there is an IPsec policy involved in this for this traffic, if there is also a NetSec policy, so a firewalling policy involved, the status, let's say the health of the cards, for instance, that are involved in this between these two VMs. And then you can also gather, let's say, all the live sessions going through these cards right now. I mean, basically, you have a really an instant view of all the live sessions, all the live connections going through the cards. Then you can go on the NetSec, and it's going to show you which firewalling policy is involved for that traffic. And then you have some predefined metrics for that between these two VMs. And as you can see, you have basically in this example, you have last 1 hour, which you are collecting, because it's basically 3 p.m. UTC on the server. And I've got statistics for different information, like for instance, here, the bandwidth for the last 1 hour. And then IPsec shows you if there is an IPsec rule involved for that protocol, for that traffic. What else? Flow export. That's where you specify flow export. I already showed it. Mirror session, sorry. That's where you configure a packet mirroring or flow mirroring. That's better to say that like this. So let me open this one, for instance, and I'm showing you here that I'm going to copy all the traffic going through some uplinks to a collector, to a server where I have a Wireshark. And this is this IP address here where I have my Wireshark. If I come back to, and I can show you another one, cancel. Let's do this one, which has another format. That's this one is used to collect traffic before encryption, when there is encryption configured. It's interesting in terms of traffic visibility, because when it is encrypted, you are losing the visibility of the traffic. So it's important to be able to collect traffic before it is encrypted. And so in this example, I'm basically collecting packets between source 73 and 72 and destination 73 and 72. I'm collecting ICMP traffic, and same thing for 73 to 71. And I'm sending that to my Wireshark server. Then I've got a connection with vCenter. That's important to be able to have the host view and workloads view, and also to configure the distributed Pensando vSwitch, where the cards are implementing some microsegmentation VLANs, which are very interesting if you want to implement microsegmentation. I've got a connection that's very new in this version, connection with Kubernetes. I can't show you anything because I don't have a Kubernetes server right now. And then the rest, you have the admin. I'm not very familiar with this one, but you can obviously configure different users. You can upgrade the software. I've already done it multiple times. Works pretty well. And then there is this API capture menu, which basically gives you the ability to see what are the API calls you need to implement if you want to manage the device, the cards through APIs, and you can enable also some live API capture. And let me show you. I'm going to open this one, save, and hopefully, if I go to API capture, we see. Well, here are the different API calls that I've just sent to the console when I was just going through the menu. So with that, I would like to close this demonstration, and I'm going to focus on some other features, like for instance the encryption and like the API programming in another video. Thanks, and I encourage you to watch the next video if you are interested by the encryption. Bye-bye.